The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association, connecting Virginians to their government. We're really pleased to have Speaker of the House Bill Howell with us today. Good to see you, sir.
Woody, it's good to be back. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, this short session has gone by pretty quick. I think things are about to wrap up maybe in a week.
Oh, I hope so. We're scheduled to get out a week from Saturday, the 25th or whatever it is. I think we could get out a day early if everybody cooperates. They're making very good progress on the budget, the Senate and House conferees. We're further along at this point than we've been in past years. The legislation seems to be moving all along. So we certainly should be done on time, if not a day or two earlier.
Well, I want to congratulate you, by the way, on one of the transparency matters that you announced earlier, and that is the ability of citizens now to access the debates in the floor of the House and the Senate on the General Assembly website on demand.
Yeah. We, you know, we're in the 21st century, so we got to behave like that. And there's a lot of things that are easy to do, and we're going to do. We're going to probably do live streaming of committee meetings, but we're going to wait till we get in our new temporary quarters because it takes a fair amount of money to wire the property, and wouldn't make any sense to do it in the existing General Assembly building that's getting ready to be demolished.
Exactly. So are you moving to the Pocahontas building?
Yes, we're moving down the hill to the Pocahontas building. And actually the move, I think, is scheduled to take place in May, early May. And then I think they're going to demolish this building, the General Assembly building. There's a lot of problems with it. It has a lot of asbestos, and they have to go slowly with that. And when they take it down, then they're going to build a new building. And it'll be 4 years before we can get in that, though. So we'll be in the Pocahontas building for about 4 years.
Tell us a little bit about the budget process. You mentioned that there's a House budget, there's a Senate budget. It has to be resolved to the extent there are differences. So what happens to accommodate the resolution of those differences?
Well, of course, you know, we do a 2-year budget, and we did that in the even-numbered years, so we would have done that in 2016. And then when we come back in 2017, the governor has made suggested amendments to that budget based on revenue forecasts or changes or whatever. And then those budget amendments come to the House and to the Senate, and we go over them, we may change them, put in new ideas. And they're never exactly the same as what the other body's done, so we have to reconcile them. And that's what's started now. We have a conference committee, 6 conferees from the House and 6 from the Senate, and they get together and work out the differences. And we're pretty far along for this point in the session. They're making the changes, and we'll come up with a combined budget that both the House and the Senate approve, and that will go to the governor, and he gets one more whack at it. He can amend it or veto items or whatever. Then it comes back to the House in our reconvened session in April, and that's when the final bill is done. So it's a lengthy process.
So there was about $1.5 billion deficit when you first started the session?
Yeah, it was $1.5 billion, and then they whittled it down with some increased income that we weren't anticipating to about $1.2 billion, and that's what we've been dealing with. And even though the most recent financial results for January were pretty strong, not pretty strong, but they were stronger than we'd anticipated. We're still going with the $1.2 billion deficit to be conservative. And we've made some cuts, and we've used some of the rainy day fund, and so much of what we do, particularly in the budget process, is all about prioritization. What's the priority? And a good example of that, Woody, is for years the public safety, the state police, the deputies, the Capitol Police that protect us in this building, have not been getting the raises and have not been getting the income that they earn and deserve. And as a result, we're losing a lot of state troopers to the other private sector or whatever, deputies as well as Capitol policemen. And so we've made it a goal of this year's budget, both the House and the Senate, to give them fairly significant raises. Now that means that maybe we can't do as much on another project as we would have liked, but again, it's prioritization, and I think we've done a very good job of that. We found money for raises for the state workers as well, and we are giving, although we're not giving direct raises to the teachers at this point, we have given additional money to the local school boards, and they can use that. There are no strings attached. They can use that for raises or whatever they deem they need it for.
So those additional monies for local school boards come from lottery funds, as I understand it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit more about those state police. As you indicate, I know we've been losing them to other states and even to local jurisdictions, and
Yeah.
also our deputy sheriffs are getting a raise, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They both are, and they both. And again, even with the Capitol Police, the men and women
Right.
that secure us here, we've been losing them to VCU campus police or things like that are just, they can pay more money. And it really is, some of the stories that I've heard are heartbreaking, because it's a tired old expression, but they really do put their lives on the line for us every day. And to my mind, we can't pay them enough. And so I'm glad we're going to be able to do some meaningful increases for them this year.
Now, the governor's initial recommendation was a one-time bonus, was it not?
Yes, yes. And I think what we've done is better, because the amount of money they're getting is more than they would have in a one-time bonus, and it goes on and on. Unlike a bonus, it comes back the next year and the year after that.
And that also has an impact on their retirement, doesn't it?
It sure does. It sure does. Your retirement's based on your last 3 or 5 years of service. I'm sorry, not your highest
Right.
3 years or 5 years of service. And so this is going to help them have larger retirement benefits, which again, they've earned and deserve.
Talk to us about the Retirement Commission, how the retirement system is doing, what you anticipate in terms of the state's ability to maintain its commitment.
Well, I've been concerned about it for some time, about the ability of the state to maintain its commitment, because the present Virginia retirement system is basically, I think it's similar to Social Security. You work for the state for so many years, and your last 5 years' salary is so much, or your highest 5 years, and you multiply that by a component, and that tells you how much income you'll get for the rest of your life. It's a monthly payment, and in fact, there's spousal benefits for surviving spouses. Like Social Security, people are living longer today in retirement. They're retired longer and they're living longer. And we're having a greater and greater pool of retirees, which is good, but a fairly static group of employees who are funding it. So like Social Security, I think it's unsustainable. And what I've suggested we do, and we're making some good headway this year with some legislation, is look at what they call a defined contribution plan, which is like an IRA or a 401k plan, where your employer contributes a set amount, and if you match it, if you put something in, he'll match that as well. And that's really, it's more the property of the employee. And if he leaves after 6 years, he can take a good bit of that with him. Unlike the defined benefit plan, I think the defined contribution plan offers the employee more, and it takes away the unfunded liabilities that the states have with a defined benefit plan. And Virginia's, we made some changes. I call it kind of nibbling around the edges. A couple of years ago, where we created what we call a hybrid plan, and this was for new hires after January 1st, 2015, that says that 20% of your retirement will be based on a defined contribution plan, and 80% will be on a defined benefit plan. So it's a hybrid between the two. But that's not enough to really move the needle. And we made some other changes. Instead of your highest 3 years salary, now it's your highest 5 years salary, which helps a little bit. And the net result was we saved, plus some additional money we put in the fund, we saved about, we're cut the unfunded liabilities by about $9 billion. But it's still about $26 billion actuarially that we would need to carry the retirement benefits out for 40 years. And some states have 2 or 3 times that liability. And they're in serious problems, because you get to the point where you're having to put more and more money into the retirement system. And so that means less and less money for public safety, for state troopers, or for
Right.
K-12 or higher education. Again, it's prioritization, but if you've got to make that payment, that takes a lot of the choice out. So I like this plan. It'll be the new hires' choice. They can choose between having a defined benefit plan or a defined contribution plan. So it's not like we're ramming anything down anybody's throat. I honestly believe that over a period of time, when people see how well the defined contribution plan works and the fact that it's portable, you know, millennials don't work at any place for 40 years anymore. They'll be there 5 or 10 years at best, and this would help them.
What's the impact of the state retirement system on the bond rating of the Commonwealth?
Well, that's a great question. Obviously, it has a very big component of the rating. We've been very fortunate in Virginia. No, not fortunate. We've worked hard to earn it. We've had a AAA bond rating from the 3 bond rating agencies since they started doing it in the 1930s, longer than any other state, continuous with having this AAA bond rating. It's something that we really cherish, but it's something that we have to work hard to protect. And if you have a huge unfunded liability like in Illinois or in New York State, that's going to impact your bond rating.
And that also impacts your ability to borrow at lower interest rates.
Sure, of course, yeah, exactly.
Talk to us a little bit about the K through 12 funding. As I understand it, you're holding harmless K through 12, but that's based upon what, 2007, 2008 funding levels?
The bottom line is, particularly with this additional lottery money, which what the local school board should like is there's no strings attached. They don't have to match money or whatever to it. I think every school system is going to do better than they have in the past. And that reminds me one other thing, which I think is just a great idea. I met earlier in the session with 5 superintendents from Southwest Virginia school systems. And your heart breaks for them because they are losing population in those counties. And that means they're losing money from the state because the state gives money to the different localities based on your average daily membership. And if all of a sudden 1,000 students have left your system, that means you're getting a lot less money. And those people in places like Buchanan County or Wythe County, they can't turn around to the county and say, okay, we need more money, because the counties don't have any money. That's really a very discouraging issue. So what we're going to do, this is in the House plan, and I have to think the Senate will go along with it. In fact, a fellow named Nick Rush, who's from Montgomery County, great member, he's on the appropriations, and I think he sort of came up with this idea, and they call it the 10-10-10 plan. And it's if you've lost over the last 10 years 10% of your average daily membership, they have about a 10% figure additional bonus that they can give you. So now a county like Buchanan or Scott or whatever can get an additional check for anywhere from $200,000, $300,000, $500,000. So that's a lifeline to a lot of these places down there. I remember one of the superintendents was telling me about a teacher that they had in his system, K-12 teacher whose kids always did best on the SOLs as well as anybody else in the school. And she's a single mom with 3 children, and they were going to have to let her go because she was the last in hired, and so she's going to be the first out when they have to let people go. They just didn't have any other place they can cut. You know, a county like where I live, where we have multiple high schools and multiple middle schools and a lot of elementary schools, if we really got into a crisis, perhaps we could close one of the schools and consolidate it with another. They don't have that luxury in Southwest Virginia. They have 1 high school and 1 middle school and maybe 2 or 3 elementary schools. So they really are up against it. And I was just delighted to see Nick's plan that he and some others came up with to generate this additional money for those counties that really need it. And it isn't just Southwest. It can be the Northern Neck or Eastern Shore or whatever.
Yeah, that's a really tough problem because you lose those students, but you have to continue to maintain that plant, as you point out.
Exactly, and you have less money. Yeah, exactly. You still have that building and those teachers.
Yeah, they've had some particular problems. The Coalfield Expressway, though, is something that they're looking forward to, as I understand it there.
Hopefully we're going to be able to get that finished. I think that's very necessary, and I think it'll be a good boost. They just need to coal is, I'm not sure coal's coming back like it did, and it isn't because of the EPA or that hasn't helped, or a lot of those messages coming out of Washington. But it's also because through fracking, natural gas has become so plentiful, it's cheaper, and it is cleaner. So they need to be able to diversify, and that's tough to do. You can't just say, okay, we want a manufacturing plant to come in, and it comes in. It takes a lot of work, and they're working on it. They've got some good ideas down there about things they can do to increase their income.
Yeah, I understand that Danville Community College, for example, has been awarded a certificate of excellence in cybersecurity, for example. That was one of the positive things that came out of the governor's remarks a few weeks ago about the number of jobs available for even high school students with appropriate certification starting at like $80,000 a year.
I know. You know, speaking of Danville, something that I was very impressed with, I went down to Danville several months ago, and they took me to that Institute for Learning that they have in Danville. And they have a program where they take about 40 young men and women from high school, but also from the community college, and they teach them basically what's called advanced manufacturing. They're working on, and they've got maybe 10 or 12 of these machines, and these kids can go in and learn how these machines work. Every one of those 40 kids has a job already before they graduate. And the neat thing is, Danville or Pittsylvania County was able to get a manufacturing facility coming from the United Kingdom. They're going to set up their American office or plant, if you will, in Pittsylvania County. And one of the big reasons was they have this pipeline of kids coming out that know how to work their machines. And so we need to do that kind of thing all throughout Southside and Southwest Virginia, I think, and I hope we will.
So are the regions cooperating a little bit better now?
Yes, they are.
Especially in terms of Go Virginia. Talk to us about that.
I think so. Well, one of the things, this program that we passed last year called Go Virginia recognizes that we've got to create the atmosphere from the ground up, not from the top down. And one of the problems we've always had in Virginia is the independent city or the counties kind of fighting over a piece of business. And there are opportunities now for them to share that business. Danny Marshall from Danville was telling me this morning about a big project that's coming in it's coming into an industrial plant that's partly owned by Danville and partly by Pittsylvania County. But the actual facility is going to be in Pittsylvania County, but they're going to share some of the tax revenue and all with Danville. So that's good. That encourages them to work together.
You mentioned the EP earlier and regulation. Is there a sense of optimism now that there's a new administration in Washington?
I think there is. I think there is. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people that aren't happy, but I do believe from the economy standard, the economy has been so lackluster for the last 8 years, really. I mean, we were in a very deep recession, but we haven't come out of it like we have in the past. And you know, I tell people that Virginia would come out of a recession with 4 or 5%, sometimes 6% growth, and now it's 1.2%. And it's hard to build your economy on that. I think when they realize that some of the things that the new administration can do, things like the Keystone Pipeline and the Dakota Pipeline, that he's able to the president can sign a letter saying we're going to do it, and now they're working towards it. Those will be tremendous boosts for the economy. But more importantly, a lot of talk about taxes. We need to cut taxes so business will prosper. We really need to cut regulations, particularly at the federal level. That's what's strangling jobs. These tens of thousands of pages of new regulations that come out every year that are promulgated by people that are not elected, not beholden to anybody, and there's no legislative review. And you look at the Dodd-Frank bill was legislative, but you look at the regulations that has imposed upon the banking system, and it's really, really tough to be a community banker these days. And community bankers are the ones that work with the small businesses, and small businesses are what grow into big and medium-sized businesses. So I'm very hopeful, very optimistic, and I think the stock market's reflecting that as well.
What about the continued impact of sequestration? Hopefully they'll find another way other than a meat axe.
Yes, yeah, there's no question about that. And our military has really been cut to the bone over the last, again, eight years or so. And I'm hopeful that from a national security standpoint, if nothing else, we're able to to reinvigorate that, but also that should have a positive impact on the economy in Virginia. And that's going to take a while to to go through the channels to get to the bottom line. But hopefully this will all help Virginia in the future.
So how's the overall economy of the Commonwealth doing now?
Not very well. Not very well. We're growing. The last couple of months have been 3 or 4% over what we projected, but we didn't project much growth at all. And I think for the last year or two, we've seen growth in Virginia of about 1.2, 1.5%. And I think if you talk to people in places like Northern Virginia or Hampton Roads, they'll tell you there's still a lot of vacancies in the commercial properties. There's still a lot of people have taken jobs that pay maybe 3/4 of what they used to make in an older job that they lost. And the reason we have this $1.2 billion shortfall primarily is because the income tax receipts, both the withholding and the estimated, were not nearly what we'd imagined, and most of that we're seeing is coming out of Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads.
There's a tax amnesty program, I think, that's going to be initiated this year.
That'll help some. That's I don't know how many times you can go to the well with that. This is
True.
the 4th time we've done it. I think they're projecting $30-some million in revenue that we'll capture from that. That's not my favorite way to do it, but it's you're looking for everything you can do.
Right. But continued investment in the Port of Virginia, for example, is still viable, I take it.
Yes, that's a real potential gem, and it's a gem now. The Port of Virginia is, as we've said before, it's the deepest natural port on the East Coast, and it's got tremendous opportunity with these huge super tankers that'll be coming through the Panama Canal and on up the coast. And in the last year's session, we created a $350 million bond fund for them that through bonding we're going to be able to modernize and update the port and get ready for these big tankers that'll be coming in. I think that's a real opportunity for us.
Yeah, it provides for a lot of jobs. Transportation is critical to that port, obviously. I know there's an inland port in Front Royal. You mentioned Danny Marshall, and I know he's pursuing some kind of inland port in South Side as well.
Well, if they could ever get the road networks straight so that they could kind of zip from the port to the Danville area and then out to the Midwest and whatever, I think that'd be a tremendous plan.
How are things going on in your district? Do you still get a lot of complaints about I-95 and the bottlenecks that still occur?
Well, we do, and unfortunately, it's going to be tough to get enough money and enough resources to make everybody have just a 40-minute commute. I will say the express lanes that are on 495 now and coming down 95, I think are wonderful. Now, sometimes I don't commute every day to Northern Virginia, and some days there can be that bottleneck, or most days, that bottleneck in the evening in Stafford. But they are right now working to extend that about another 2 miles, and hopefully that'll help the bottleneck some. And then it's in the plans to bring it eventually to the Rappahannock River, and we're trying to, we've got funding to put a connector lane across the Rappahannock, and hopefully we can get the money sometime to do it northbound. We've got the southbound money. So we're seeing improvements there. It's a continual battle, but and the problem is, Woody, it's not a problem. A lot of people would love to have this situation. We've still got a lot of people move into our area,
sure,
and they commute. And when Spotsylvania County approves a 2,500 home project, every one of those homes are going to have at least 2 cars coming out on 95 every day, and you add that to the volume grown up, going already there. It's a tough thing to handle.
Has the Smart Choice Initiative taken the politics out of how funds are distributed?
Oh, it has. That's a wonderful piece of legislation. There's a young man. Everybody's a young man to me now, but there's a young man whose father went to law school with me, and I've gotten to know him over the years, and he's a real whiz kid on transportation ideas among anything else. He was with the Department of Transportation during the Bush administration, and very capable guy. And he came up with, he was the one that talked to me about the about the metric system and putting it into place. And I talked to Chris Stolley about it. Chris Stolley just gets no credit for that bill. It was his bill, and he worked on it. And but it's won national awards. I think it's probably the only one of its kind in the country. And what it does is exactly you say, it takes the politics out of it, out of where the roads go. They look at which road is going to do the best to reduce congestion, which road would do the most to improve safety, which road might do the most to help with increased economic development. They have a various matrix of factors, and they put them all together, and they can say, okay, we've got X dollars, and we can do project A, B, and C. And I think it's good.
It's interesting because when you have those construction projects, you have people moving in on short-term rentals, for example.
Yeah.
And I know Airbnb has been another part of the dialogue here this session. Talk to us about the pros and cons of that issue.
Airbnb?
Yes.
Well, the pros are it's the 21st century economy, and somebody sent me something the other day that pointed out about how, I don't believe this exactly, but Airbnb has more people that stay in their properties than all the motels in the country. And they don't own a motel. The other factor they had, which is probably more believable, more people use Uber, which doesn't own one taxi cab, than all the taxi cab companies. So it's all part of this new way we're going. In Uber, we came up with a really good, I think, compromise, and it's working very well in Virginia. The problem that we've had with Airbnb is the initial bill that went through last year really took a lot of decision-making authority away from the local governments. And as you say, if you live in a nice subdivision somewhere, or even a not so nice subdivision somewhere, and your neighbor across the street moves out of town and he's renting the house at the Airbnb, and he's got 4 bedrooms, he can put 12 people in there. And not sure you want that. And so they've been working on it. Senator Norman has a bill that I think keeps a lot of that power at the local level. It's a little different from the Uber situation. Here you're talking about people living in your neighborhood sort of thing. And so hopefully they'll come up with something, because it's the new economy, and we better get used to it.
And of course, there's a revenue impact to local jurisdictions as well, potentially.
Yeah. There could be. It's maybe hard to follow, but we'll see how that goes.
Well, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your leadership in the House of Delegates. Good luck the rest of the session.
Thank you, Woody. It's always good to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.